There is an old rule in the mountain communities of Appalachia. It is older than the communities themselves. It goes like this. When someone in your household is dying, when death has come into the house and is sitting in the room, patient and present, waiting for the moment, you do not open the door after dark. Not for any reason. Not for anyone, no matter who is knocking, no matter whose voice you hear, no matter how cold it is outside, or how long they say they have been walking, or how well you know the face looking at you through the window glass. You do not open the door. Most people who grew up with this rule do not know where it came from. They think it is about grief, about protecting the dying from disturbance, about keeping the final hours sacred and private. And that is part of it, but only part. The people who know the whole reason, the oldest families in the oldest communities, the ones who have been keeping this rule for 200 years without having to be told why, those people know something the rest of us are only beginning to understand. The thing that comes to the door when someone in the house is dying is not always who it says it is. It has been watching your family. It knows the right face to wear. It knows the right voice to use. It knows which person, standing on your porch in the cold, you would not be able to turn away. And it has chosen tonight, this night, when grief has made you tired, and the storm has made you isolated, and the dying man in the back room has made everything feel urgent and fragile, to finally knock. The Voss family did not know the rule. They were not from these mountains. They learned it the way you learned things you should have known from the beginning. Too late. This is the midnight door. Do not open it.
The family. A note before we begin. There are 5 people in the cabin on the ridge above Canaan Hollow when this story takes place. You need to know them before the night begins, because this story is about all of them, and because what happens to each of them matters. Harlan Voss, 74. The man who is dying. Retired schoolteacher. Born in Ohio, moved to these mountains with his wife 40 years ago because they wanted land and quiet, and the particular life that mountain land made possible. He has been ill for 8 months. He is in the back bedroom. He is mostly unconscious. When he is conscious, he asks for water, and once, around 7 in the evening, he asks for his youngest child by name. Bette Voss, 71. Harlan's wife of 49 years. She is the center of the family, the person everyone else orients toward, the one who has held this together since the diagnosis, since the decline, since the decision 3 weeks ago that he would die here, in this cabin, in the bedroom where they have slept for 40 years. She is exhausted. She has been exhausted for 8 months, and she will not show it. She sits in the chair beside his bed, and she holds his hand, and she does not sleep. Cora Voss Hadley, 48, the oldest child, a high school principal from Roanoke, organized and competent and the first to arrive when the call came. She has been here for 4 days. She manages the practical things, the medications, the calls to the doctor, the food that no one is eating, the coordination of who sleeps when. She is frightened under the competence. She has not said so. James Voss, 45, the middle child, a contractor from Christiansburg, broad-shouldered and quiet, the family's practical hands. He fixed the porch step that was rotting when he arrived, checked the propane tank, split extra firewood. He does not know how to sit still in a sick room. He makes himself useful and stays near the edges of things. Wynn Voss, 38, the youngest, drove 4 hours from Richmond when Cora called, works in publishing, lives alone, the child who moved furthest from the mountains and who the family sometimes worries about in a low-grade way because of the distance and the silence between visits. She is the one Harlan asked for by name at 7 in the evening. She was sitting beside him when he said it, and she took his hand, and she did not let go for a long time. These are the 5 people in the cabin, and one more at 9 o'clock who knocks on the door.
Part 1. The night begins.
6 p.m. February, Canaan Hollow, Virginia. The storm came in from the northwest in the early afternoon, the way February storms came in these mountains, fast and total, the temperature dropping 15 degrees in 2 hours, the snow starting as a dusting and thickening to a curtain by the time the last light went off the ridge. By 6 o'clock, the road down the mountain was impassable. Cora had checked at 5:30, driving the truck to the first switchback and looking at the grade below. 6 inches of wet snow over ice, the guardrail barely visible. She had driven back to the cabin and told James, and they had looked at each other and understood. They were here until morning at the earliest. She had not told her mother. Bette Voss did not need one more thing to manage tonight. The cabin was warm. James had the wood stove going full and the propane furnace backing it up, and the temperature inside was the close, particular warmth of a small space well heated against serious cold. The kind of warmth that should have been comforting and was instead simply a reminder of what it was keeping out. Harlan was in the back bedroom, in the bed he had slept in for 40 years. The hospice nurse had come in the morning and left at noon, and would not be back until tomorrow, road or no road. She had told them what to watch for and what it meant, and how to manage the medication, and what the final hours would look like. She had been kind and professional, and had given them all the information they needed, and none of the information they wanted, which was that it was going to be all right. It was not going to be all right. They all knew that. The knowing sat in the cabin with them like a fifth presence, quiet and patient, taking up no space, and all the space. At 6 o'clock, Wynn was sitting with Harlan. Cora was in the kitchen making soup that no one would eat. James was on the porch in the cold for no reason he could have named, except that the inside of the cabin was pressing on him, and he needed to breathe air that did not smell of illness and wood smoke and the particular staleness of a room where someone had been lying still for a long time. Bette was in the chair beside Harlan's bed. She was always in the chair beside Harlan's bed. She would be in the chair beside Harlan's bed when it ended. They all knew that, too. At 6:45, Harlan opened his eyes. He looked at Wynn first, just looked without speaking, the way he had been doing in his more conscious moments, as if looking was the important thing and words were beside the point. Then he said her name. Wynn said, "I'm here, Dad." He said, "Good." He closed his eyes. Then he said, without opening them, "Don't let anyone in tonight. No matter who comes, no matter what they say." He was quiet for a moment. "Promise me." Wynn looked at her mother. Bette was looking at Harlan with an expression Wynn could not read. "Dad," Wynn said, "it's storming. No one's going to—" "Promise me." She promised. She did not keep it. None of them did.
7:30 p.m. Cora brought soup into the bedroom, and Wynn ate half of it, and Bette ate none of it. And they sat in the warm room, with the snow coming down outside the window in thick curtains, and the wood stove ticking in the front room, and Harlan's breathing slow and irregular, and the night beginning in earnest. Cora told James about what Harlan had said, about the promise. James looked at the front door. "He's confused," Cora said. "The medication, the oxygen." "He didn't sound confused," Wynn said from the doorway. She had come out for water and heard them. "He sounded exactly like himself, like he does when he's made up his mind about something." They looked at each other. Outside, the wind moved through the ridge timber, and the snow came down, and the road was buried, and the nearest neighbor was 3 miles below, and the cell signal had been gone since 5 o'clock. "No one's coming up this mountain in this weather," James said, "not for any reason." He was right. He was almost right. 9 p.m. The knock. It came 3 times, unhurried, evenly spaced. The knock of someone who was cold and tired and expected to be let in. All 4 of them heard it. James was closest to the door. He went to the window beside it and looked through the glass into the porch light's reach. A man stood on the porch. Old coat, work boots, snow-covered shoulders and hat brim. The posture of a man who had been walking in weather and was glad to have arrived. James opened the door. Curtis Doyle was 70 years old, heavyset, with the weathered face of a man who had spent his working life outdoors. He had known Harlan Voss since both of them were in their early 30s, the friendship of two men who had moved to the mountains at the same time and found in each other the specific companionship of people making the same improbable choice. They had hunted together, argued about politics on each other's porches, helped each other move furniture and fix fences, and navigate the particular difficulties of mountain property. Harlan's children had grown up with Curtis Doyle in the background of every family photograph taken in this county. "Lord, Curtis, what are you doing up here in this?" Curtis said. "Heard about Harlan, wanted to be here." His voice was rough with cold. His hands, when James took them, were freezing. Come in," James said. "Cora, it's Curtis Doyle." Cora came from the kitchen. Her face, tight with the evening's weight, softened. "Oh, Curtis." She took his hands. "How did you even get up here?" "Truck has chains. Took it slow." They brought him inside. Wynn put water on for tea. James took his coat. Bette came out of the bedroom. She had heard his voice, and the two of them stood in the front room for a moment, and Bette took both his hands, and they looked at each other in the way of two people who had known each other for 40 years and understood what the other was carrying without having to say it. "He's resting," Bette said. "Good," Curtis said. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "Nowhere else to be," he said. He sat in the front room by the wood stove with his tea. The family moved in and out around him, checking on Harlan, making more tea, sitting for a few minutes, and then standing again with the restless energy of people who could not settle. Curtis was a quiet presence, which is what he had always been, a man who did not fill silences with words, but whose presence filled them anyway. At some point, Wynn thought it was around 10, maybe 10:15. She looked toward the chair by the wood stove, and Curtis was not in it. She looked around the front room, kitchen, hallway. "James," she quietly said, "where's Curtis?" James looked up from his phone. No signal. He had been checking out of habit. "He stepped out for some air, maybe. Back porch." Wynn went to the back door. She opened it and looked out into the dark and the snow. Nothing. She went back to the front room and looked at the chair by the wood stove. The tea mug was on the side table, half full and cold. She picked it up. The tea had been cold for a while, not just stepped out cold, long cold. She looked at James. "When did you last actually see him?" He could not answer. 11:45 p.m. The yard. Harlan had asked for the spare blanket, the thick one, the green wool one, that had been in the truck since they loaded in Roanoke 4 days ago. Cora had forgotten to bring it in, and the request had come through Bette, who had asked James, and James had put on his coat and gone out the front door into the snow. The truck was parked 20 feet from the porch, driver's side facing the cabin. James was halfway to it, head down against the wind, when he saw the shape in the yard. A man, standing in the snow between the truck and the tree line, facing the cabin, facing specifically the lit window of the back bedroom, the yellow square of warm light that showed against the drunk, the only light on this face of the cabin. Standing very still. James stopped. He said, "Curtis?" The shape did not move. James took 2 steps toward it. He had his phone out, no signal, but the flashlight worked, and he raised it. Curtis Doyle stood in the snow in his old coat and his work boots, hat brim still carrying the accumulated snow of hours standing outside, and he was looking at the lit bedroom window with an expression that James could not entirely make out in the flashlight's reach, but that was not grief, and was not vigil, and was not anything James had a name for. His hands were at his sides. He had not moved when James said his name. He was not blinking. James said, "Curtis? What are you doing out here?" Curtis turned his head and looked at James. James took a step back. He would not be able to explain it afterward. The face was Curtis Doyle's face, the same weathered features, the same heavy jaw, the same pale eyes under the hat brim. Everything was right. Except the expression. Except the way the eyes moved when they found James. Not the natural, slightly surprised movement of a man caught in a private moment, but something slower. Something that had the quality of a calculation completing. "Going back in. Cold out here." He walked past James toward the porch. James stood in the snow with his flashlight and watched him go. He stood there for a long time. Then he went to the truck and got the blanket, and he stood beside the truck for a moment longer, and he thought about the cold mug of tea on the table inside. Long cold. And he thought about the last time anyone had actually seen Curtis in the room. And he thought about the shape in the yard, standing perfectly still in the storm for hours, looking at his father's window. He went back inside. He locked the door. Part 2. What James Knew. He found Wynn in the kitchen. He did not tell her what he had seen. Not yet. He needed to think first. He was a man who thought before he spoke, and what he was thinking was not organized enough yet to become words. He went to the front room. Curtis was in the chair by the wood stove. The tea mug was in his hands, steam rising from it, freshly hot. James looked at the mug. He had been outside for 4 minutes at most. The tea that had been cold for a long time was now steaming. He sat in the chair across from Curtis, and he looked at him. Curtis looked back with the easy, settled patience of a man who had been sitting in this chair all evening. No snow on his shoulders, no snow on his hat brim, dry coat. He had been standing in the yard for hours. His coat was dry. James said, "How long have you been inside?" Curtis said, "What do you mean?" "I mean, how long have you been sitting in this chair?" Curtis looked at him with the expression of a man who was being asked a strange question and was deciding how to answer it. "All evening," he said, "same as you." James said, "I just saw you in the yard." "I stepped out for a minute earlier," Curtis said, "for some air." "You were standing in the yard looking at my father's window." "I was getting some air." "Your coat is dry." The smallest pause. "Shook it off on the porch," Curtis said. James looked at him. He had known Curtis Doyle for 38 years. He had hunted with him and argued with him and moved furniture with him and sat at his kitchen table. He knew the particular quality of Curtis's attention, the directness of it, the way he met your eyes when you were talking to him, the slight squint that was a remnant of years of outdoor work. The man in the chair was meeting his eyes, but the eyes were not squinting. Curtis Doyle always squinted, even indoors, even in low light. It was a habit so deep it had become a feature of his face. The man in the chair was not squinting. James said, "I need to check on Dad." He stood up. He walked to the hallway. He did not look back. Midnight. He found Wynn in the hallway outside the bedroom door. He pulled her into the kitchen and he told her, quietly, quickly, all of it. The shape in the yard, the standing still, the expression, the cold mug, the dry coat, the eyes that did not squint. Wynn listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "Dad told us not to let anyone in." "I know." He said it like he knew something was coming. "I know." They looked at each other across the kitchen table. "What is it?" Wynn said. Not, "What do you think it is?" or "Could it be?" What is it? Present tense, as if she had already accepted the category of the thing and was asking only for specifics. "I don't know," James said. "I don't know what it is. I know it's not Curtis." "Where's the real Curtis?" James shook his head. "Does Cora know?" "Not yet." "Mom?" "No." Wynn pressed her hands flat on the kitchen table. She looked at them for a moment. Then she said, "What does it want?" James looked at the hallway door, at the direction of the front room where the thing that wore Curtis Doyle's face was sitting by the wood stove with its fresh hot tea. "I think it wants to be in the room when Dad goes." He paused. I think that's what it's been waiting for. I think that's why it came tonight." Wynn was very still. "Why?" she said. James had no answer. "How do we get it out?" she said. That he thought he might know.
Part 3. The Old Knowledge. There was a woman in Canaan Hollow named Virgie Lester, 81 years old, who had lived in this community her whole life and who Bette Voss had spoken of occasionally over the years, not as a friend exactly, but as the person you called when something happened that you didn't know how to handle, the person who knew things. James had her number in his phone because Bette had made him put it there 3 years ago for reasons that had seemed vaguely superstitious at the time and did not seem superstitious at all right now. No signal. He already knew there was no signal. He went to the back door and stood on the back porch and held the phone up in the snow and got one bar, flickering, and he called. It rang 4 times. He thought it was going to voicemail. She picked up. "James Voss," she said before he could speak. Not a question. "Miss Virgie," he said, "something's wrong. Something came to the door tonight and we let it in and—" "I know," she said. "I felt it go up the mountain 3 hours ago." A pause. "I hoped you wouldn't let it in." "We didn't know," he said. "No," she said. "Most people don't." Her voice was not unkind. It was the voice of someone who had been making this particular phone call in her mind for some time and was ready. "Listen carefully. I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it exactly as I say. Can you do that?" "Yes," he said. She told him. He went back inside. Wynn was in the kitchen doorway. He nodded at her, and she followed him to the front room. The thing in Curtis's shape was still in the chair. It looked up when they came in. "Everything all right?" it said, in Curtis's voice. "Fine," James said, checking on Dad. He went to the hallway. He gestured for Wynn to follow. In the hallway, he spoke in her ear, very quiet. She listened. Her face changed as she listened. Not fear, resolution. The face their father made when he had decided something. She nodded once. They went to get Cora. 12:20 a.m. The salt and the iron and the open door. Virgie Lester had told James 3 things. The first, salt at every threshold, every door, every window. A line of it, unbroken, on the sill and the sillboard and across the floor at the base of every exterior door. She described it without explanation, and he did not ask for one. The second, iron, something iron touching every exterior wall. The cabin's fireplace poker was iron. The wood stove's handle was iron. He found in the kitchen drawer an old iron trivet that Bette had used for decades. He placed them all. The third, and this was the one she had paused before telling him as if weighing whether to say it at all, the third was the door. "You have to open the front door," she said, "wide, and you have to do it when the thing is in the room." "And then what?" "And then you say the words I'm going to tell you, all of you in the room together, all of you who are blood. You say them to the open door, not to the thing, to the door." "Why the door?" "Because you opened the door to let it in," she said. "The same door has to be opened to show it out. That's how the accounting works. Door in, door out. It can't stay once the door is open and the words are said. It has to go." "Will it go?" A pause that was slightly too long. "It will go," she said, "but it won't go easy. It will try to make you close the door. It will give you a reason, a very good reason. You cannot close the door until the words are finished. No matter what happens, no matter what you hear, the door stays open." "What will we hear?" "I don't know," Virgie said. "I've never seen it use the same thing twice. It knows what you love. It knows what you can't bear. Whatever you hear, whatever it does to make you close that door, it will be the thing you would least be able to resist." A pause. "That's why there have to be 3 of you. One person can't hold against it alone, but 3 people who are blood can hold each other." James, Wynn, and Cora stood in the kitchen doorway. The thing in Curtis's shape was in the front room. Bette was in the bedroom with Harlan. "Mom can't be part of this. She has to stay with him." "I know," James said. "Virgie said 3. We're 3. Wynn looked toward the front room.
Her face was the face their father had given her, steady, set, the look of someone who had found the bottom of their fear and was standing on it. "Tell us the words," she said. They went into the front room together. The thing in Curtis's shape looked up. Something changed in its face, a very small thing, a shift in the eyes, a tightening around the jaw when it saw all three of them together. As if it recognized the configuration, as if it understood what the configuration meant. "Everything all right?" it said, again, the same question, the same voice. James went to the front door. He put his hand on the latch. "Don't," the thing said. James opened the door. The February dark poured in, with the wind and the snow and the cold that was so much colder than the warm room that it hit them like a physical force, and all of them flinched. And James felt his hand tighten on the edge of the door because everything in him wanted to close it against that cold. He held it open. Cora's hand found his arm. She gripped it. Wynn stepped up on his other side. They said the words Virgie had given them, all three of them together, facing the open door. The thing in the chair made a sound. Not Curtis's voice anymore, not any voice James had a word for. The sound that came from the shape in the chair was something between a frequency and a language, something the ear received as sound, but that the rest of the body received as pressure, as vibration in the sternum and the back teeth and the deep bones of the inner ear. And then it changed. The thing in the chair was no longer Curtis Doyle. It had let go of the face, not dramatically, not at all at once, but the way water let go of a shape when you poured it out. The Curtisness of it running off and leaving something underneath that was not a face and not a body in any sense James had a word for, that was present in the chair the way a held breath was present, the way a gap in a sentence was present, that occupied the space where Curtis had been without being anything he could describe or name or look at directly. He looked at the open door. He kept saying the words. From the back bedroom came his mother's voice. "James." One word, his name, in her voice, his mother's voice, exactly right, the voice from every childhood memory and every phone call and every moment he had ever needed her, with an urgency in it that he had not heard since he was a child and that opened something in his chest immediately and completely. He almost turned. Wynn grabbed his arm with both hands. "Don't," she said, "the words, keep saying the words." "What if she needs?" "Keep saying the words, James." He kept saying the words. His mother's voice came again from the back bedroom, saying his name, and then Wynn's name, and then Cora's name, and the urgency in it was the urgency of a woman whose husband was leaving and who needed her children. Cora made a sound. James took her hand. They said the words. The presence in the chair, the gap, the held breath, the thing with no face, moved. It moved toward the door. Not quickly, not in the way a person moved through a room. It moved the way temperature moved, the way cold moved into a warm space when you opened a window, a gradient, a presence spreading and thinning and flowing in a direction. It passed through them. James described it to me months later as the worst cold he had ever felt. Not the cold of winter air or cold water, but the cold of something that had never been warm. The cold of a thing that understood warmth as an absence rather than a presence. The cold of something very old and very empty passing through the space where he stood, and through him and out through the open door into the February dark. It passed through all three of them. And then it was outside. And then it was gone. James closed the door. His hands were shaking badly enough that the latch took 3 tries. He turned. The chair by the wood stove was empty. The tea mug was on the side table, cold, a ring of dried tea at its interior waterline where it had been half drunk and forgotten hours ago. Wynn was already running to the back bedroom. James and Cora followed.
Part 4. That Voss was in the chair beside the bed. She was holding Harlan's hand. She looked up when they came in, and her face, James would remember her face in this moment for the rest of his life, would bring it out and look at it the way you looked at something precious, would describe it to me with a precision that told me he had spent a great deal of time trying to find words equal to it. Her face was at peace. Not the peace of someone who had not heard the voices from the front room, not the peace of ignorance, the peace of someone who had heard and had understood and had stayed where she was because staying was what was needed. "He went," she said. The word landed in the room. "When?" Cora said. "Just now," she said. "While you were in the front room. I felt it." She looked at Harlan's face. "He went easy. He was holding my hand and he went easy." Wynn made a sound. Bette held her hand out without looking away from Harlan, and Wynn took it, and then Cora took Wynn's other hand, and James stood in the doorway of the room where his father's body lay and felt the specific silence of a room after a long illness has reached its end. The cessation of something that had been present so long, its absence was its own presence, louder and fuller than the thing that had gone. "I called," Bette said quietly. "For all of you. I called your names." James looked at her. "You called us?" he said. "I did, just a minute ago. You didn't come." She looked up at him, and her expression was gentle and without reproach, only the faintest question. "Were you busy?" James looked at Wynn. Wynn looked at James. "Yes," he said. "We were busy. I'm sorry." Bette nodded. "It's all right," she said. "We didn't need anyone else. We were fine here, just the two of us." She looked at Harlan's still face. "We were always fine, just the two of us." James went out to the back porch at 2 in the morning. The storm had stopped. The sky had cleared to the particular deep winter black of a mountain sky without clouds, the stars very bright and very cold. The yard was smooth and white and unmarked. No tracks, not from the coming, not from the going. Whatever had stood in the yard for 2 hours looking at his father's window had come and gone without leaving a mark in the snow. As if it had not been there. As if none of it had been there. He stood on the porch for a long time in the cold, and he looked at the yard and at the tree line and at the mountain dark above the ridge, and he thought about his father saying, "Don't let anyone in, no matter who comes, no matter what they say." He thought about how Harlan had known. He thought about 40 years of living in these mountains and what they taught you if you were paying attention. He thought about the real Curtis Doyle, who was presumably at home 3 miles below, and who had almost certainly not come up the mountain in the storm, who probably didn't know yet that his oldest friend had died tonight. He would have to call him in the morning, when the roads cleared, when the signal came back. He would have to call him and tell him. He went back inside. He sat with his sisters and his mother in the room where his father lay, and they stayed together through the rest of the night, and nobody went to the door and nothing knocked. The wood stove ticked in the front room. The stars were very cold and very bright beyond the window. The mountain was quiet. Afterward, Curtis Doyle came to the cabin 2 days later when the roads cleared. He had been home the night of the storm, he said. Hadn't been able to get up the mountain. Had tried to call, but the signal was out. He had spent the night at home alone, not knowing, and in the morning when the roads opened, he had driven straight up. He was sorry he hadn't been there. He said it the way men of his generation said things they felt deeply, simply, looking at the floor, leaving the weight of it in the air. "You were there in spirit," Bette said. She meant it as comfort. She did not know what she was saying. James did not correct her. James called Virgie Lester a week after the funeral. He asked her what the thing had been. She said, "What it always is. The one that comes when someone is crossing over, that waits near the dying for the moment the soul leaves, because in the moment it leaves, there is an opening, and something that is not welcome can come through if the door is already open." "The cabin door?" James said. "Any door," she said, "but a door that has been opened to it specifically is better for it than one it has to force. That's why it knocks. That's why it asks to be invited. An invitation is a kind of door." "Why does it want to be there when someone dies?" She was quiet for a moment. "For the same reason anything wants to be present at a sacred moment," she said. "To partake of it, to take something from it." A pause. "The mountain communities have always known about it. The rule,
Don't open the door when someone in the house is dying. That rule is older than any of the communities, older than the settlers. It was here before. It was left here by whoever was here before them. Harlan knew, James said. Your father had 40 years in these mountains, Virgie said. He paid attention. The mountains taught him what they teach everyone who listens. She paused. He told you not to open the door. You didn't listen, James said. You did eventually, she said. That's what matters. He sat with that. Did it get anything? When my father died, did it get what it came for? Virgie Lester was quiet for a long time. No, she said finally. You got the door open in time. You said the words. It left before he went. A pause. Your father went clean, with his wife beside him and his children in the next room. Clean. James sat in his truck in the parking lot of the grocery store in Christiansburg, and he pressed his hand flat on the steering wheel, and he breathed. Thank you, he said. Thank your father, Virgie said. He told you not to open the door. You found your way back to that. He drove home. He did not look in the rearview mirror for a long time after he left the parking lot. Old habit now. New habit. He was working on it. He was getting there. There is a rule. It is older than the communities that keep it. It was here before the first settlers came over the ridge. It was left by whoever was here before them, who had learned it the same way the Voss family learned it. Too late, but learned. When someone in your house is dying, when death is in the room, sitting in the corner, patient and present, you do not open the door. Not after dark. Not for anyone. No matter whose voice you hear, no matter whose face you see through the glass. No matter how cold it is outside, no matter how long they say they have been walking. Because the thing that comes to the door on the worst night of your life, on the night when you are exhausted and isolated and grief has made you careless, that thing has been watching your family. It knows the right face. It knows the right voice. It has been learning you. And it has been very, very patient. Don't let it in. No matter who it looks like, no matter who it sounds like. Your father told you. Whatever he told you before he went, he meant it. He knew what was coming. The mountains had been teaching him for years. Listen to what your dying tell you. They can see things we cannot. They are already standing in the doorway. They know what is standing on the other side. If the midnight door got into you tonight, if you were going to think about it the next time you hear a knock after dark, good. That is exactly where it was supposed to go. Leave me a comment below. Tell me, would you have opened the door? Knowing what you know now, hearing that voice, seeing that face, standing in the warmth with the storm outside, would you have been able to keep it closed? I think most of us would have done exactly what the Voss family did. I think that's the point. I read every comment, every single one. We're just getting started. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next. The fire is still going. The mountains are still full. Lock your doors tonight. All of them. And if something knocks, look through the glass first. Look very carefully. Check whether the eyes squint.